Today I'm here to announce that our office will be filing charges against Nick Reiner, who is accused of killing his parents, actor-director Rob Reiner, and photographer-producer Michelle Singer.
So with that, we are set for January 7th for an arraignment. That's the next court date, and that's all I have to say at this point. There may be more at some other point, but today we're going to rest on where we stand procedurally, which is this was a continuance of arraignment. Nothing happened today substantively. We'll be back for an arraignment in the same department on the 7th of January. We'll see you.
Today, an announcement ricocheted through headlines, dense with confusion and fear, as officials spoke about filing charges against Nick Reiner, identified in early reports as the son of actor-director Rob Reiner and photographer-producer Michelle Singer. The wording alone was enough to ignite panic, especially as names were rushed together and details blurred, creating a perfect storm of alarm before clarity could catch up. Within that chaos stood Steven Spielberg and Rob Reiner, two towering figures of modern cinema who've always moved in different creative lanes, yet shared the same relentless devotion to storytelling. Spielberg built breathtaking, suspense-filled worlds that swallowed audiences whole, while Reiner carved out a reputation for sharp comedy and deeply felt human truth. Different styles, same passion, same respect. Their paths crossed often at industry gatherings where admiration flowed easily, and conversations about movies never felt forced or performative. These weren't surface-level exchanges. They were exchanges between craftsmen who understood the pressure, the magic, and the cost of getting it right in Hollywood. That's why a sudden wave of alarming rumors about Rob sent shockwaves through the industry and hit Spielberg hard, even if only for a moment. Confusion took over, fear followed close behind, and the thought of losing a longtime friend rattled him deeply.
Attended Conan O'Brien's Christmas party Saturday night with his parents, Michelle and Rob. Maybe Nick was not invited to Conan O'Brien's party. He was wearing a hoodie. Reports are that he was acting weird, apparently accosting celebrities outside. Nick reportedly stormed off in a huff after a tiff with Bill Hader of SNL and Barry at Conan's Christmas party, and that Rob had been telling people, friends, that they were scared for Nick and scared for his mental state, that it was deteriorating.
Just weeks earlier, Spielberg clearly remembered standing at a party, watching Rob glow with pride as he spoke about his son Nick overcoming addiction and finding his way back home. That joy had been unmistakable, written all over Rob's face. The two directors stood there trading ideas, dreaming out loud about future projects and stories still waiting to be told when exaggerated reports began spreading online. The emotional impact landed fast and heavy even before the truth surfaced, turning the situation into a painful reminder of how quickly misinformation can spiral out of control. Thankfully, the rumors were false, but the emotional damage didn't vanish overnight. For Spielberg, it felt like staring into a nightmare version of reality, one no director or friend ever wants to imagine. Spielberg later addressed the situation with visible emotion in a rare, media moment. Rob was not just a colleague, but a friend, a companion on a cinematic journey that I deeply cherish, he said, his voice quiet but loaded with feeling, every word carrying weight. The scare shook him, not only as a filmmaker, but as a human being who understood how fragile life and reputation can be in Hollywood. As Spielberg reflected, frustration and sadness flickered across his face. He spoke about meeting Rob back when they were both young, hungry, and chasing impossible dreams. "I remember Rob back then, full of dreams, yet always humble," he recalled, his hands tightening slightly as memories rushed back, proof that the respect had never faded. When Spielberg mentioned the films that defined Reiner's legacy, the emotion was impossible to miss. He spoke with raw honesty about what made Rob different from so many others in the business. He created stories that made people laugh, cry, and really think, Spielberg said. Filmmaking isn't just art, it's connection.
I feel after all of this it's not about punishing. If somebody has, is struggling and has difficulties, you don't punish them for that. And I think a lot of these programs feel like the kid is being punished. And I don't think that's a great way to go. You're a parent and you think, here's my kid running out into the street, he's going to get hit by a truck. You want to.
Every word landed heavy in the room, the respect unmistakable. Rob wasn't just the mind behind The Princess Bride, When Harry Met Sally, or Stand By Me. He was the man who turned laughter into meaning and friendship into something lasting. As Spielberg grew quieter, the weight of legacy pressed in. Rob's films would live on, but the emotional toll of nearly losing a friend lingered. During the height of the confusion, Spielberg publicly reached out to the Reiner family with a message of support. Words that were later misinterpreted amid the chaos, meant to express compassion, not fuel panic. He described Rob as a wonderful friend, an extraordinary colleague, and a gifted storyteller, making it clear just how deep that bond ran. Then Spielberg shared a private memory, one he rarely revisits, peeling back the curtain on a heavier reality. Years earlier, at a relaxed Hollywood gathering, laughter filled the house and old film stories flew freely, a reminder of how quickly joy and fear can collide in this town. But that night, amid the laughter and clinking glasses, Steven Spielberg noticed something that didn't fit. Rob wasn't holding court or swapping stories. He was standing off to the side alone, drink in hand, looking drained and distant, in a way that clashed sharply with the lively room. Spielberg walked over, concern written all over his face, and spoke gently. "It's been a long time. You don't look too well. What's going on?" Rob paused, sighed, and without a word, quietly pulled him toward the balcony, away from the noise and the watching eyes. That's where Rob Reiner finally opened up. He spoke about Nick going through a difficult period, and the fear in his voice was impossible to miss.
Just have a couple of quick words. First of all, and most importantly, this is a devastating tragedy that has befallen the Reiner family. We all recognize that. Our hearts go out to the entire Reiner family. There are very, very complex and serious issues that are associated with this case.
Spielberg later recalled that Rob described addiction struggles and emotional setbacks carefully and respectfully, choosing each word with the caution of a father trying to protect his child's dignity. "I could hear the pain in every sentence," Spielberg said later. Rob tried to smile, tried to keep it light, but the weight was unmistakable. Finally, Rob admitted, "Steven, you know, Nick has been struggling with addiction for years. We've tried treatment, structure, support, everything we could think of, but relapse kept pulling him back." His voice dropped lower, eyes fixed on the dark sky, carrying a pain only a parent could truly understand. Spielberg remembered that moment clearly, the instant when Rob finally let the walls come down. Rob confessed he had poured his heart into making Being Charlie, hoping the project could help his son heal and maybe pull the family closer together. "For a while it worked," Rob said, his voice tightening. "He stayed clean for some time, but now it feels like we're back in the storm again." Fear crept into every word. "I'm terrified, Steven. I wake up scared that one day I might lose him forever." Spielberg listened closely, leaning in, choosing his words with care. "Rob, you've done everything a father could do," he said firmly. "Nick is lucky to have you and Michelle standing with him." But Rob just shook his head slowly, his voice cracking under the weight of it all. "Sometimes we listen too much to doctors and not enough to our son," he admitted. "I just want to save him, but the harder I try, the more helpless I feel." The two men sat in silence for a long moment, taking slow sips of wine, letting the truth hang heavy in the air. That conversation never left Spielberg's mind. Time moved on, years passed, but the emotion stayed raw. By October 2025, Spielberg and Rob crossed paths again at the Governor's Awards, hosted by the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences in Los Angeles. The room glittered with legends, polished speeches, and echoes of Hollywood's golden years.
These need to be thoroughly, but very carefully dealt with and examined and looked at and analyzed. We ask that during this process you allow the system to move forward in the way that it was designed to move forward, not with a rush to judgment, not with jumping to conclusions, but with restraint and with dignity and with the respect that this system and this process deserves and that the family deserves.
As Spielberg entered the hall, he spotted Rob across the room, smiling wide, laughing with old friends. It stopped him cold. Spielberg walked straight over, and the two embraced tightly, patting each other on the back like brothers who had weathered storms together. "Rob, you look great," Spielberg said, genuine surprise in his voice. "How have you been?" Rob laughed, eyes glowing in a way Spielberg hadn't seen in years. "Steven, you won't believe this," he said excitedly. "Nick's home. He's doing much better. Clean for months now, working small jobs, talking with us again, like before." Warmth hit Spielberg's chest instantly. He remembered the late-night confessions, the fear, the exhaustion. He squeezed Rob's shoulder and smiled. "That's amazing. You and Michelle never gave up. After all these years, hope is finally here." The relief felt real, not forced. They stayed off to the side after that, talking movies, young actors, and ideas still buzzing in their heads. But Spielberg couldn't stop thinking about Rob's smile. It carried rare optimism, hard-earned after years of anxiety. Looking back, Spielberg later admitted his voice dropped when the memory surfaced. Who could have imagined, he thought, that just months later, life would remind them how fragile hope can be. Spielberg still remembers the shock that hit him when he first read about the tragic situation surrounding Rob Reiner's family. All that hope, just beginning to glow, felt like it vanished in a heartbeat. He stared out the window for a long time, his thoughts drifting back to that night, filled with laughter, lights, and optimism. "Rob, I'm happy for you," he had said back then. Only later did Steven Spielberg realize just how fragile that hope truly was. Well, life doesn't move in straight lines, and its sharpest turns often arrive without warning, cutting deep before anyone has time to brace themselves. In the days that followed the heartbreaking news cycle and its emotional fallout, Spielberg found himself retreating into something familiar and comforting, rewatching The Princess Bride, one of his most cherished films. He smiled through tears when he heard the iconic line, "As you wish," softly whispering to himself, "Rob, you lived fully, and your work will never fade." Spielberg ended his public message with words marked by care and restraint, choosing peace, respect, and gratitude over speculation or noise. He emphasized that Rob's creative legacy, his humor, warmth, and humanity could never be erased, no matter how painful the moment felt. Hollywood felt heavier in that instant, the air thick with reflection, but the films remained bright, alive, and deeply human. Truthfully, Spielberg and Rob Reiner were never daily hangout friends. They weren't calling each other every week or showing up unannounced, but within the film industry, their bond was built on something just as strong, mutual respect. Both men shared a deep belief in storytelling as a human force, shaped by Jewish cultural roots and artistic households that valued expression, curiosity, and emotional honesty. Reiner gravitated toward grounded, human-centered stories, films about friendship, love, fear, and inner conflict. Spielberg, on the other hand, leaned into scale, wonder, and emotional intensity, crafting worlds that felt massive yet deeply personal. Different lanes, same purpose. They crossed paths often at award ceremonies, film seminars, and major industry events, always exchanging admiration without ego. Reiner once said that Spielberg's ability to fuse emotion with imagery was something every director could learn from. Spielberg returned that respect by praising Reiner's rare talent for reaching straight into the heart of everyday humanity. That kind of praise, spoken quietly and sincerely, remains one of the highest forms of respect one filmmaker can offer another, which brings the focus back to Spielberg himself. What kind of director is he really? How does he use light, sound, and framing to create stories that don't just reach the eyes, but carve themselves into memory? Stephen Allen Spielberg was born on December 18, 1946, in Cincinnati, Ohio, into a family of Eastern European Jewish descent. He was the eldest child and the only son growing up alongside three younger sisters. His father, Arnold Spielberg, was a brilliant electrical engineer working with massive early-era computers, grounded in logic and precision. His mother, Leah, was a passionate pianist who filled the house with music, warmth, and creativity. Those contrasts, logic and emotion, structure and imagination, would later shape one of the most powerful storytelling voices cinema has ever known. Spielberg grew up in a home that felt close and loving, but never permanent. Each time he settled in, boxes appeared again, followed by another move dictated by his father's work. New streets, new schools, new faces. Nothing stayed the same for long. Familiar places vanished just as quickly as they formed, forcing Steven to adapt fast in a world that kept shifting beneath his feet. "I remember every move," Steven later said. "Each time I felt like I lost a piece of myself." But that sense of loss shaped something powerful inside Steven Spielberg. It taught him how to watch people closely, how to listen instead of rushing to speak, and how to quietly find his footing in unfamiliar rooms. Those skills weren't born from comfort. They were forged through constant change and emotional uncertainty. When Steven was just 6 years old, his parents took him to see The Greatest Show on Earth, directed by Cecil B. DeMille. As the lights dimmed and the circus burst across the screen, young Steven froze in his seat, eyes wide, barely breathing. The spectacle overwhelmed him in the best possible way. Walking out of the theater, he grabbed his mother's hand and whispered, "I want to make things that scare people and make them feel joy like that." Leah smiled, brushed his hair gently, and replied, "Then you must first learn how to tell stories, my dear Stevie." That moment stayed with him forever. At 12 years old, everything shifted again. His father handed him an 8mm camera, and suddenly the world became something Steven could frame, control, and transform. He filmed non-stop family trips, backyard scenes, and dramatic toy train crashes, staged with absolute seriousness. He even cast his sisters, declaring, "You play the victims, I'll save everyone." Those grainy little films became his way of mastering fear, turning chaos into meaning. But outside the safety of home, life was far less forgiving. After the family moved to Phoenix, Arizona in 1957, Steven found himself one of the only Jewish kids around. He later spoke openly about being bullied, about punches, insults, and the quiet ache of isolation. "I always wondered why I was different," he admitted, retreating inward and observing the world instead of rushing into it. That pain sharpened his empathy. It gave him an instinctive understanding of loneliness, fear, and hope, emotions that would later pulse through every frame of his films. By 13, Steven had already made a 40-minute war film called Escape to Nowhere, which won a youth film competition. At 16, he poured all his savings into Firelight, a science fiction epic running over 2 hours. It screened for one night at a local theater to only a few dozen people, but to Steven, it felt enormous. As the lights came up, he told himself with absolute certainty, "One day people will line up to watch my films." That belief never left him. Years later, Spielberg revealed one of the most painful moments of his teenage life, one that quietly shaped him for decades. At 16, during a family camping trip, Steven accidentally captured something deeply personal on film. While recording near the campfire, he unknowingly filmed his mother, Leah, holding hands with Bernie Adler, his father's closest friend. The realization hit him like a shockwave. He turned off the camera immediately and buried the truth deep inside, carrying that secret alone for nearly 3 years. When his parents divorced in 1965, his father, Arnold, quietly took responsibility, shielding Leah and protecting the family from public judgment. Steven, who had moved to California with his father, didn't understand the full story at the time. Overwhelmed by anger and confusion, he once said coldly, "Dad destroyed this family." Arnold didn't argue or defend himself. He simply nodded in silence. That pain didn't fade quickly. It simmered for more than 15 years. Steven grew emotionally distant from his father, blaming him for every crack in the family foundation, unaware that the truth was far more complicated than it appeared. That unresolved conflict, tangled with loneliness and guilt, shaped Steven Spielberg's deeply layered understanding of humanity. He came to know the quiet tension between love and resentment, between silence and forgiveness, in a way few storytellers ever truly grasp. Those emotional fault lines would later echo through his films, especially the modern fables, where personal memory and storytelling collided head-on. By the late 1960s, Spielberg's talent was impossible to ignore. In 1968, his short film Amblin screened at a festival and stunned executives at Universal Studios. Steven knew instantly this wasn't a hobby anymore. This was his life. He dropped out of college, became an unpaid intern at Universal, and secretly used empty offices at night to work on his own projects, driven by pure obsession and belief. In 1969, at just 22 years old, Spielberg signed a long-term directing contract with Universal, becoming the youngest director in Hollywood history to land such a deal. He started in television, directing episodes of Night Gallery and Columbo, but it was the 1971 TV movie Duel that changed everything. The tense story of a man hunted by a mysterious truck gripped audiences and critics alike, announcing Spielberg as a force to be reckoned with. That success opened the door to his first feature film, The Sugarland Express. But the real explosion came in 1975 with Jaws. The shark thriller became a cultural phenomenon, earning over $470 million worldwide and creating the very idea of the summer blockbuster. Spielberg later admitted the shoot was brutal. "There were moments I thought the shark would get me before the film was finished," he joked. But Jaws turned him into a superstar and reshaped the film industry forever. What followed proved Spielberg wasn't just about fear and spectacle. Films like Close Encounters of the Third Kind and E.T. the Extraterrestrial revealed his compassionate core, stories driven by wonder, connection, and longing. He later confronted history and war head-on with Schindler's List and Saving Private Ryan, films that explored moral conflict and human suffering without flinching. In 1994, Spielberg co-founded DreamWorks, producing major hits across genres. Even into the 2000s, his creative fire never cooled. Films like Lincoln and Bridge of Spies proved his storytelling power remained razor-sharp. Despite global fame, Spielberg kept his personal life tightly guarded. He married actress Amy Irving in 1985, and they welcomed a son, Max Samuel, later that year. The marriage ended in 1989, but both remained respectful and united as parents. Amy later said, "We did what was best for Max." Not long after, Spielberg found lasting love with Kate Capshaw, whom he directed in Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. What began as a professional collaboration slowly grew into something deeper and enduring. During the audition process, Spielberg met Capshaw twice and was instantly struck by her screen test. "I watched Kate's audition tape and knew she was right for the role," Spielberg later recalled. Kate once joked, "I never imagined that a role filled with screaming and chaos would lead me to the man of my life." During filming in Sri Lanka and the United States, the two naturally grew closer through shared meals, long conversations, and quiet moments between intense shoot days. It wasn't until 1989, after his divorce, that Steven Spielberg and Kate Capshaw officially began dating and later moved in together. Kate later explained, "We grew close on set, but we knew we had to wait for the right moment for anything real to begin, a quiet acknowledgement of timing, respect, and restraint." Before their wedding, Kate made the deeply personal decision to convert to Judaism, and in 1991, the couple married in both civil and Orthodox Jewish ceremonies. Spielberg later shared that his mother Leah and Kate helped him reconnect profoundly with his Jewish identity and heritage, grounding him in tradition, memory, and meaning. Their union blossomed into a large, blended family. Kate brought her daughter Jessica from a previous marriage, while Spielberg had a son Max from his marriage to Amy Irving. Together, they welcomed additional biological and adopted children, creating one of Hollywood's most well-known and tightly bonded extended families. Their marriage has now lasted more than 3 decades, an extraordinary rarity in the entertainment world. Kate gradually stepped away from acting to focus on family life and painting, while Spielberg continued directing at the highest level, never losing his creative momentum. Their family includes 7 children, all of whom have grown into independent adults pursuing their own paths. Some entered film, acting, or entertainment, while others chose entirely different directions, a reflection of the freedom Spielberg and Capshaw encouraged at home. In 2020, one of Spielberg's daughters publicly spoke about her personal career choices, emphasizing that they were made independently and with full family support. Spielberg has always maintained a consistent stance, his role as a parent rooted in care, guidance, and respect, never control. Beyond his own family, Spielberg became a mentor figure to young actors early in their careers. Most notably, he formed a protective bond with Drew Barrymore during E.T. the Extraterrestrial. She needed stability, Spielberg once said. Being there for her wasn't just responsibility, it was meaningful. Even now, at 79 years old, Spielberg remains deeply active in filmmaking. He continues developing new projects and revisiting classic franchises with the same curiosity he carried as a teenager holding his first camera. "I've never felt tired of storytelling," he said with a quiet smile. "Every film is a new chance to say something honest." In recent years, Spielberg has focused more on health and balance, making thoughtful lifestyle adjustments to keep his body and mind strong enough for the demands of modern filmmaking. Close collaborators say his creativity remains razor-sharp, fueled by discipline, curiosity, and purpose rather than pressure. Following recent emotional reflections on the fragility of life and the weight of long-standing industry friendships, including heartfelt words about Rob Reiner, Spielberg reminded audiences of something simple yet powerful. "Awards fade," he said. "Fame fades, but people are the story." That belief has defined his entire career, from childhood fear to cinematic wonder, from private pain to universal truth. If this story moved you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Please comment below with your reflections on Steven Spielberg, Rob Reiner, or the films that shaped your life. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more emotionally rich stories and deep dives into Hollywood legends.